Hi everyone, my name is Karen. This is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. So if you watched my recent reads video, the one that went up just before this, I talked about the 8 books that I read right at the end of May, and I wanted to separate it so those videos aren't super long, although I feel like that video was almost 20 minutes anyway. And in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about all the books that I have read so far in June. So if you saw my May wrap up, you know that May was a stellar reading month for me. I read 32 books, I think it was, and June has got off to a much slower start. We're about halfway through June now, and I've only read 6 books so far. That was to be expected. I knew June was going to be a lot busier of a month for me. I've also been really sick for the past, like off and on for like about the past month, and so I haven't been feeling well. So I've been spending a lot of time when I've been off sick just like sleeping and not getting the reading done that I normally would have. I also haven't listened to any audiobooks this month because I've been off work a lot. I will quickly mention that I did start 2 different audiobooks that I didn't finish. I haven't DNF'd them. It's the case where both of them got to the stage where they were going to expire before I could finish listening to them, and so I made the decision to stop listening at that point that I was at and then return them and then re-put them on hold in hopes that I'll get them back and then I can finish them. So the first of those was Middle Game by Sean and Maguire, which I read 42% of and was really enjoying. So I'm really looking forward to getting that back. I may end up just listening to the whole thing again because I feel like by the time, that one's got a lot of holds on it, so by the time I get it back, I'll probably want to read it just so I'm fresh on all of the details. The second one was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I read, I think, 36% of that. Similar situation. I wasn't enjoying that one as much. I feel like it's kind of a slow book and the writing is a bit meandering, I guess I would say, but I was still like enjoying it. I feel like we were kind of getting more into the meat of that story right around the time that I had stopped listening. So again, I will probably listen to that entire book in its entirety again once I manage to get my hands on that book again. So I did start 2 audiobooks, but I haven't managed to finish them. I'm going back to work tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow, on Monday. It's only Saturday today. Whew, don't end your weekend sooner than you have to, Karen. And I'm hoping to get through a couple of audiobooks next week and get back on track with my reading. So audiobooks has been a factor in why I haven't read much. And then also I was away for 4 days in Sydney, having a fantastic time with my friend Emma, and going to my friend Tina's wedding, which was so lovely. You'll see clips of all of that in my vlog, which will be coming up at the end of June, so stay tuned for that. But because I was away, I was only doing reading for like 20 or 30 minutes like before I went to sleep each night, and not reading at all during the day. So there were like 4 days there where I got hardly anything read as well. So it's just been a much slower reading month is the gist of this really long-winded explanation. But I have read 6 books so far. So in this video, I'm going to give you my thoughts on all of those books. So let's jump straight in and talk about them. So the first book I want to talk about is Follow You Home by Mark Edwards. This is a book that I read from my Kindle. It's one of my Kindle backlist books, so a book that I have had on my Kindle for years and haven't got around to reading. So this is a thriller novel. It follows an English couple who are backpacking through Eastern Europe. They're currently in Romania and they're on a train. And they don't have tickets for a sleeper compartment. They've just got like regular tickets. However, there is a sleeper compartment that has a broken door, and so no one's in it, and they're really tired, and they make the decision to go into the compartment and try to get some rest. They both fall asleep, and when they wake up, their bags have been robbed and their passports and their tickets and everything has been stolen, and the ticket inspector has come around and they get kicked off the train in the middle of nowhere. There's also another girl, a Romanian girl, who gets kicked off with them, who was trying to help them. All 3 of them get kicked off the train, and they're in like the middle of this forest in the middle of nowhere, and so they are walking along the train tracks to try get to the nearest town or whatever, following the train tracks to the nearest town, when something horrible happens in the forest. We don't know what. It's then several months later, and the 2 main characters have returned to the UK, to England, and we're following them, dealing with the aftermath of what's happened and trying to figure out what's gone on. This book got off to such a solid start. The beginning of the novel with all of the build up on the train, and then the incident in the forest, all of that build up and the premise was just so interesting and so intriguing and so tense. Like it really got off to a great like tense building beginning. However, and I, for the most part, enjoyed the writing, and I really enjoyed the premise, and I enjoyed the characters and all of that. The story just got a bit too convoluted and a bit too ridiculous, I guess. For me, there's just a lot that starts to go on that you have to really start to be like, I just don't believe that it would get this complicated. Like, there's too much going on. So it's one of those cases, but for the most part, I did enjoy it. Like, I was really enjoying the first half of the novel, but the second half, it really started to fall away for me. So in the end, I gave that a 3-star rating. I then read Full Circle by Kate Tiernan, which is the 14th book, the second book in this bind-up, the 14th book in the series overall. However, it turns out that the 14th book is kind of the final book to this part of the series. There is one more book, but I'll get into what that's about later on in this recent reads because I have read it. But Full Circle is the final novel in this kind of arc of the story. It does tie up everything from the previous like 13 books into this 14th book. It is a dual perspective. We get 2 perspectives that we have had throughout the series. I thought that it was a nice ending. There was one character who I feel like, who we had a POV from previously in the series, whose storyline I didn't feel like was really tied up. Like, I wanted more to hear more about what happened to them. Like, after 14 books and having books with POVs from this character, I wanted more about that character. And you just don't get enough of that. But for the most part, I thought this was a really nice, enjoyable ending to the kind of arc of the series, and I gave that a 3.5-star rating. I then read the Jane Austen Book Club by Karen Joy Fowler. So this is one of the books that I had to read for one of my 2019 goals. I've previously seen the movie to this years ago and remembered kind of vague details about it. Had never read the book. It's basically about a group of 5 women and 1 man who form a book club who each month for like 6 months, they're reading and discussing a Jane Austen novel. And it's basically supposed to be about how the themes in the like Jane Austen novels and the issues and the things that they're discussing, how it kind of replicates what's going on in their lives. I really didn't enjoy this book for the most part. It's, again, it was just boring. It was really quite boring. For each of the like kind of 6 main characters, we get a lot. Some of them are more prominent than others, but for the most part, we just get backstory. So much of the book is just about going back and finding out their lives that led them up to this point of being in the book club. And then you get very little actual interactions. The only interactions you really get of them together is in the book club, and for each kind of portion of like each month where they're reading a book, the very end of it is the discussion of them at the book club, and before that, depending on who's hosting that month, you're just kind of getting a lot of information about their lives. And it was just, you just get so little actual narrative of like this, what's going on in this story. And I found that the whole Jane Austen part of the book is hardly a thing. They discuss very little about Jane Austen in some months, and I just found that the whole themes of the book supposed to tie into their lives. I don't know if it just went over my head, maybe it did, but it just didn't seem, I didn't feel the connection between those 2 things, and it didn't work for me, to be quite frank, and I gave it 2.5 stars. I then read Knight's Child by Kate Tiernan, which is the 15th book. So this is a situation of, and I had noticed, I think I mentioned it in my TBR when I talked about it, that I'd noticed that this 15th book was like double the length of all the previous books. All the previous books had been around 180, 190 pages, and this final book was like 320 pages. So this book is actually a like separate kind of sequel to the original series that follows, it's set in the future. It follows one of the characters' child. It's a dual perspective. We follow that character and their child in like a dual narrative. It's set like, I think it's like 15 years in the future, so it's like a separate storyline, so to speak, but it does obviously tie into the previous books. I thought it was nice. I liked seeing future, like of the future of this like character, but again, there is a character that's quite prominent in the original series that's literally not even mentioned in that book, and we didn't get closure for them in the series itself, so I was kind of like, what's going on with them? And we just didn't get it. But for the most part, it was quite enjoyable. I really enjoyed the like story that was going on in it. I enjoyed the child. I liked the dual narrative. It was fun. for the most part, it was a good time. And in the end, I gave that a 3.5-star rating. I then read Someone You Know by Olivia Isaac Henry. This is a NetGalley arc that I had, and this is a thriller. It's about a woman who has had a twin sister, and her twin sister went missing when they were about 18, I think, 17 or 18. And it's now been, I think, 15 or so years, and her sister's body has just been found. And so you get 2 timelines. And so we follow the remaining twin in the current timeline, and then in the past, from when they're 10, I think turning 10, from their 10th birthday, we follow the twin who went missing and has subsequently been found dead. We follow her storyline from when they're about 10, leading up to the point of her disappearance. So you get both twins' kind of perspectives in different times. This one is a bit of a mixed bag for me in that I didn't super love the book. I didn't find it engaging at all, but that could be partly due to the fact that it took me a long time to get through this book, because I started this book on the plane on the way to Sydney, and then I was really only reading really small chunks of it while I was in Sydney, and then I didn't read the end of it, the main part of the book, until like the 2 days I was back in Adelaide when I got home. So I read this book, it took me like almost a week, which is so unusual for me. It's not the normal way that I read. So that could, to be honest, be a part of the reason why I didn't feel engaged in the story. This book also falls into the massive thriller trope of having the unreliable narrator in the remaining twin, in that she has huge drug and alcohol problems, mainly alcohol. She's an alcoholic basically. And so she is constantly drinking to like extreme excess, and then not remembering things clearly and all of that type of thing. And you can't exactly trust like what she remembers and what's going on, and her like opinions and feelings on things you can't really trust. And it's not my favorite trope in thrillers. I've always said that I love a good tropey thriller, and I do for the most part, but the whole alcoholic main character is not my favorite. And I really just found her incredibly difficult to relate to, because she was just making, and I understand that it's because she has an alcohol related issue, which I can't relate to because I don't have an alcohol related issue, that she was just making incredibly terrible decisions. And every time she would like start to make a terrible decision, or like start to get really drunk when she shouldn't be doing that or whatever, I was just like, stop, like stop doing that. Just like be smart and just like don't do that. But I understand that it's because she has a problem, but I just found it so incredibly frustrating and so hard to relate to in this particular narrative. And like I said, and then because I was reading in such small chunks, I just really couldn't engage with the story in the way that I wanted to. I also found it pretty predictable. And then having said that I found it predictable because I could tell where the author was trying to lead us. But I found the motivations for what had gone on pretty weak. Even though I could tell that that was where the author was leading us, when we find out kind of like the why, I was like, not really buying it. But it was okay. It wasn't a terrible book. I would read more by this author. Like I said, I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that I read it in such small portions while I was away, and it just took me quite a while to get through. But I ended up giving it 3 stars. And then the final book that I've read recently was The Husband by Dean Koontz. So Dean Koontz is quite a prominent horror thriller author. I think I've only read 1 book by him, which I read in high school. It's a very nostalgic book for me that I plan to reread soon, because I read it, I think when I was I say high school, I don't even think I was in high school. I think I was like 10 or 11, and it was the first book, the previous Dean Koontz, we're not talking about this yet, that I read and was like, wow, I think mum and dad would like not want me to read this if they knew like what was in it. And I felt very adult and like, you know, mature that I was reading this book. And so it was my sister's, and I borrowed it from her. And so I've got a lot of nostalgia attached with that book, but I don't think I ever read anything else by Dean Koontz, despite him being such a prominent author. And so when I saw this, I got this at a dollar sale at a secondhand bookshop several years ago. I decided to grab it and give more of Dean Koontz a go. This is definitely more like action thriller as opposed to like any form of psychological thriller. I just realized I've left my bookmark in there. Or anything else of that nature. So it basically follows a man named Mitch, who is a gardener. He owns like a gardening landscape business, and he is on site one day and he gets a call, and at first he thinks it's his wife, and then he realizes that it's a kidnapper and someone has kidnapped his wife, and they're giving him 60 hours to get together a $2 million ransom. However, he's not the type of person that would have someone kidnapped and held for ransom. Like, he's just a gardening landscape guy. He doesn't have access to $2 million. And so him and like how they want him to get the money, and like that is like the kind of kicker to the plot, and him trying to get his wife back. This was kind of boring. Not boring, I didn't find the plot super interesting. There is one twist, kind of, not like at the end, like kind of part of the way, I don't really know where. There was a twist that happens kind of part of the way through the novel that I hadn't seen coming. And I was like, ooh, good work, Dean Koontz. I liked that. I didn't see that coming, and I always love that. But then once that kind of part had happened and we were just plotting along with this character, trying to solve this issue, I don't know, I just wasn't overly engaged in it once again. And then this one falls into the huge trap. I mentioned it, nope, that was in the recent reads video I just filmed before this, that it falls into the trap of a thriller novel tying off the ending in this very much, like this is like to the nth degree, tying off everything in a nice, neat little happy little bow at the end. In a way, I don't want to spoil what happens at the end, but it's one of those ones that we get. I'm not saying that everything's like happy, it's not the right way to put it. It's that you don't just get the ending, you then get like the big epilogue at the end of like 1 year or however much, and it's not even 1 year, it's like 4 years in the future or something, of getting to see like what's happened into the future. And I just find that so unnecessary. It doesn't fit into the narrative style of these novels. It just, the novels are supposed to be gritty and dark, and then the author feels the need to add this part of the story in that's like, but don't worry, because this is what happened in the future. And it just feels so disingenuous to the type of story that it is, and I hate it when authors do it. So again, enjoyable enough, but just not my super favorite. No huge problems with it, but it was just kind of okay. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. So in terms of what I'm currently reading, I'm not actually currently reading anything. I just finished The Husband last night, actually. I haven't picked anything up yet today. I am planning to pick up The Drop by Michael Connelly, which is the next Harry Bosch novel that I have to read. I'm going to be picking that up later today to read, and I'm hoping to start, like I've mentioned, some audiobooks on Monday when I go back to work. That's really it. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts, or to hear about what you guys have been reading and liking, or reading and hating lately. I would love to chat down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys!